Everybody, it's Dr. Joe's in the house on this Wednesday evening. Hope you're doing well wherever you are. Today we've got another great session lined up. And let's see, just streaming up for Instagram. And Instagram should be good to go right now. So let's keep going. Okay, good. So anyway, hope you're doing well wherever you are. This is Dr. Joe Asimo on this Wednesday evening. Got another great session today. We're going to talk about BRRRR. I call it BRRRR Smarter. Seize today's market, build tomorrow's future or wealth, I suppose. The reason why I decided to talk about this, I know it's BRRRR is it's kind of an interesting topic. That's the buy, renovation, rent, refinance, repeat. I've been doing this for a long time, for about 30-something years in some form or the other. And I know BRRRR was hot a few years ago. It's kind of cooled down now, but there are ways where it can work. One thing I like about it is that it allows you to kind of recycle money around and to build a portfolio when you have limited funds, but you have to do it right. And, so that's what I'm going to kind of talk about sometimes today. The market has shifted, as we all know. And what used to work a few years ago probably doesn't work today. Rising interest rates, the different environment and so forth. So the idea is that there are opportunities as the market slows down. And looking back now, the best time to buy usually is when, the competition is less, prices, sellers tend to be a bit more reasonable. And, if you know what you're buying, if you're strategic about it, you can usually get better deals. As long as you can ride the turbulent waters for a few years until the market picks up. And that's where the finding good tenants, especially the Section 8 program, really comes into play, because tenants tend to stay longer and your income stream tends to be a lot more stable. So anyway, so the idea is that, that's the system I've been using for a while. And though I'll kind of do a deep dive into, pretty much how you can implement BRRRR in this changing environment that we're in today. So I suppose we got, as usual, I broke it into 6 parts and, 6 sections. There are action items for each part we do. But before we get too far, if you got any questions, please put them in the chat box and I'll try to get to them about 25 minutes from now. And any questions, real estate, whether it's anything to do with BRRRR, whether it's due to landlording, whether it's due to tenants, whether it be due to acquiring, financing, whatever it is, any issues that you're facing, by all means, put them in the chat box and I'll give you my shot. I'll try to give you an answer, or my take anyway. And if you want to do a deeper dive, on a specific topic or challenge that you're facing, you can book a one-on-one with me where we can do a deep dive. I just had one today with Sean, and a very good session, and talk about Section 8 for his properties that he wants to get into. So if you want to talk about something, issue, problems that you're facing, please book a one-on-one. You can go to my website, joeasimo.com. That's joeasimo.com, www.joeasimo.com. And you can go to Ask Dr. Joe and you can book a one-on-one session here. So with that said and done, let's get down to the topic at hand, which is, BRRRR Smarter, which is seize today's market, build tomorrow's wealth. And I'll start off with the introduction, which is, are you worried about, BRRRR? And one wrong move can pretty much derail your entire investment plans. It can. If you don't do it right, you could lose money. And, and so you have to be careful, because today's residential real estate market, it's really nothing like what it was 3 or 5 years ago when it was hot. Interest rates have gone higher. Renovation costs has really, gone up quite a bit. And tenants tenant demand has shifted, and also lending requirements, lending standards have changed. Put all that together, and it means that it's a more challenging environment, and it's almost like walking into a minefield. If you're not careful, you may step on a landmine and blow yourself up. So many who jumped into BRRRR investing during the boom years, 3, 4, 5 years back, COVID, post-COVID, many people are stuck with underperforming assets, or worse, deals that can't be even refinanced profitably. And but there are also those who have done quite well, and because opportunities do abound, and the investors who know how to BRRRR smarter, are still able to build wealth, secure excellent tenants, and grow resilient portfolios, in my opinion. The key is to stop relying on outdated playbooks and really start implementing modern strategies that account for today's risk and realities. So what we're going to do today in today's live stream is we'll explore hard-won lessons that I've experienced, both successes and failures, from real world investors that are navigating BRRRR deals today. So what we're going to do, we're going to learn about sources, how to find better deals, control renovation risk, structure smarter financing, how to lease or rent to great tenants, and position yourself in your portfolio to thrive over the long term. So that's what we're going to cover today. Again, let me just summarize: how to source better deals, how to control your renovation risk, structure smarter financing, lease to great tenants, and position your portfolio to thrive long term. That's what we're going to talk about today. And as I said earlier on, we're going to break into 6 parts. And so let's go to part 1, which is why BRRRR fails more often today. Why do BRRRRs fail more often today? And I suppose the question is, why are investors who used to succeed with BRRRR now seeing more setbacks? And how can you avoid the same fate? So those people who used to be, gung-ho or selling great things about it, some of them have experienced setbacks. And so how can you avoid some of the, the fate that some of these folks have had? Well, in today's market, too many investors are operating from the assumption, really basic, they have assumptions that are no longer valid and no longer true. They're basing their assumptions on underwriting models that were built when rates were 3 to 4%, where credit was loose and credit was more flowing, and values were rising quickly. So the good old days, rates were 3 to 4%. It was easier to get money, and values are always increasing. That's the good old days. But now, what's happening now? Refinances may not cover your original cost, because interest rates have gone up. Rent comps are softening. The rate at which rents are increasing in some markets, it's slowed down, if not gone down. So, and renovation costs are really unpredictable. I recall, I used to do projects for 100, 150 that are now 200, 250, or even 300,000. Investors also fall into the trap of forcing deals to work, stretching ARVs assumptions, thinking, well, if I do this, maybe the ARV will, instead of being 300, I think I can stretch it to about 350 or 325 or 365. They're kind of creating false scenarios and trying to force this deal to work when in reality, they're making assumptions which aren't valid. They ignore red flags on renovation scope, i.e. increase the scope too much, whereby it gets too expensive. Or they may underestimate the challenges associated with getting tenants. So in a softer market, you simply can't count on rising values. You can't. And you can't count on, I'll get this place. It's easy to get a quality tenant because there's always somebody looking. Well, that's not always the case. The smart investors like you and I, we take a risk-first approach. We kind of stress test the deals heavily. Before we buy, we do what if scenarios, what if analysis. We build in higher contingencies for financing. We plan for longer hold times. It may take longer to complete the rehab. It may take longer to find a quality tenant and things like that. We prioritize cash flow over speculative appreciation. So does the deal cash flow? And yes, over time it may appreciate in value, but you got to be kind of careful how much you think the property is going to appreciate, especially in the short term. So, savvy investors also recognize that not every deal is a BRRRR deal anymore. It just doesn't. And therefore it makes sense to pass on projects that don't meet strict criteria. I have very, very clear guidelines as to the kind of properties and the kind of deals that I'm interested in. And if it doesn't meet that, I can't do it. I'm particularly interested in the location because location in a soft market really is the key. The neighborhood, proximity to features and amenities that your tenants are looking for, whether it be shopping, recreation, transportation, and things like that. So you develop your buy box, your criteria, and and then you work with deal finders, whether it be wholesalers, whether it be real estate agents, and bird dogs, to hopefully find properties that meet that criteria. So what are some of the action items associated with why BRRRR fails? Rebuild your deal analyzer, to reflect today's interest rates and tightening lending conditions. Build in a contingency reserve. Many times a lot of people use 10% for renovation, overruns. You may want to increase that to 15, 20, 25%. A model scenarios where the after repair value comes in 5% or even 10% lower, and see if the numbers make sense. And only pursue BRRRR deals where the property will, still generate cash flow positively, when you run through these different scenarios. Okay. So let's get down to number 2, smarter deal sourcing in today's market. Smarter deal sourcing in today's market. How do you find deals? So I suppose the question is, how can you find BRRRR deals that will succeed, even as competition heats up and margins shrink? So how do you find these deals that make sense in today's market? When competition is still strong and the margins are shrinking. Well, the MLS deals that worked 3 or 4 years ago may not pencil out, today. Successful BRRRR investors like you and I are sourcing deals from MLS still, but also look at some less visible channels, things like off-market sellers, distressed landlords, probate situations, tired small landlords, burnt out landlords who are looking to exit the market, and also get referrals from wholesalers and agents who really understand today's underwriting environment. They also savvy investors in terms of finding deals. They also take much more time to kind of understand what is quote unquote a good deal. What is that? What's a good deal for me may not be a good deal for you, and vice versa. So rather than just chasing the steepest or the deepest discount, I think now is the time to focus more on properties in locations, as I mentioned earlier on, which are more resilient, and where there's a great tenant demand. Where tenants actually want to live there, and if you have the luxury where there's landlord-friendly policies in place at the state, local level, and also a stable long-term rent trends. So these are things which are important, as opposed to just buying stuff. And again, the BRRRR is all based on, at the end of the day, you're going to rent this thing and hold it for a long time. So you want a place where you can attract quality tenants and who actually want to rent your place and hopefully will stay for a long time. And and long time, I've just found out the Section 8 program, the tenants there just stay longer, and it's a lot more resilient because the income stream is pretty reliable for the most part. I mean, we don't know what's going on with Dodgy and some of the cuts that's going to happen, but historically, voucher tenants tend to stay in properties a lot longer than market rate tenants. That's been my experience anyway. So a slightly thinner discount in a stronger neighborhood. Okay, so a smaller discount, but it's in a better neighborhood. Often, in my opinion, beats a deep discount in a declining area. Okay, so let's just repeat that again. savvy investors, I think, because location is really, really important. I think it's better to maybe get a little discount in a better area than a deep discount buying stuff in a declining or not so good area. That's just my opinion. So another common trap for new investors is overlooking hidden costs of deferred maintenance, bad layouts, or permitting issues. These are silent killers, I think, to your cash flow. Maintenance, the cost of maintenance, maintaining your properties, repairing, bad layouts, just kind of not functional. And if you have to do major renovations, permitting issues, trying to get the permit sorted out, they can add to your cost. So smart investors spend extra time in due diligence, walking comps, understanding neighborhood cycles, and bringing contracts to initial walkthroughs. So that's number 2. And what are some of the action items here? Focus on sourcing from off-market channels if you can, direct mail, landlords, tied landlords, probate, relationship-based leads. Prioritize neighborhoods with stable tenant demand, even if discounts are smaller. And finally, walk potential projects with contractors early to catch hidden renovation risks before committing, because renovation costs can escalate pretty fast and can wipe out any profits that you're thinking of doing. Okay, so number 3, navigating renovation challenges. So we're getting more into the rehab phase, and the question is, I suppose, how are successful investors overcoming today's renovation delays, cost overruns, and contractor shortages? How are successful investors overcoming today's renovation delays, cost overruns, and contractor shortages? That's what's the issue here. Renovations still remains the number 1 cause of BRRRR deals going off track today. Costs can just spiral. The cost of hardware, the cost of labor, cost of materials. It's kind of surprising sometimes, pretty high. Material costs, they can fluctuate on a weekly basis. Labor shortages, sometimes it's just hard to get good, reliable contractors. You can always find contractors, but the good, reliable ones is not always easy to get. And therefore that can lead to project delays. Also, the regulatory hurdles, I think, is important, because in some municipalities, it just takes longer to get permits. There's just a lot more red tape you have to go through, and that can stall the progress of your project for months. So you got to factor that stuff in, otherwise it can wipe out any potential profits. So smart investors now operate proactively. Some people pre-order materials while the prices are reasonable, vetting contractors rigorously, and creating airtight scope of works. They also design in renovations with tenant durability in mind. These are long-term rentals, so you want to try to get design it in such a way, at least during the rehab, with durability in mind. Things like finishes that look great but hold up to wear and tear, and pretty much reduce the number of maintenance calls that you could get from the tenant. Also, communications can be another differentiator. Successful investors, we conduct weekly meetings with the contractors. We go to the project on a weekly basis to make sure everything's okay. We demand videos and photographs from the for the contractors to ensure that the project's staying on track. And also we tie contract payments to defined milestones. So if you do A, B, C, then you get some money. Once you've done D, you get something. So they are clearly defined milestones that have to be met before draws and payments are made, rather than just sort of vague promises. The contractor wants money because we're quote unquote almost done, which doesn't really mean a lot to anybody, really. And so what are some of the action items here? Navigating the renovation challenges. Things like pre-order major materials up front to lock in price and availability. Implement milestones-based payment plans with contractors, e.g. after demo, after rough-ins, after inspections, and payments are due. And use tenant-focused design choices, durable floors, easy to clean surfaces, practical kitchens, and layouts. Okay, so kind of halfway through. So if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat box, and I will definitely get to them in about 10 minutes. Anything to real estate, if I can be of assistance, please put them in the chat box, and I'll get to them shortly. And if you want to book a one-on-one with me, where we can do a deep dive into any situation, any problems, any challenges that you're experiencing, you can go to my website, www.joeasimo.com. That's www.joeasimo.com. And you can press the icon or the button for Ask Dr. Joe, and you can schedule a one-on-one with me. Okay, so let's get down to number 4, creative financing and refinance strategies. Financing I think is important, during this phase. The question is, how can you structure smarter financing in a high rate, tightening credit environment? Okay, the environment is changing. Money is getting tighter. It's getting harder. And so how do you structure, your financing in this environment? Well, gone are the days of easy refis at 3.5%, 4%, whatever it is. It's now 6-7%. Many BRRRR investors are now facing a reality where refi rates are 6.5%, to around 7.5%. In fact, I did one yesterday. I did 2 refis yesterday. No, not yesterday, Monday. And they were DSCR loans, and they're in the just about 6.6 or 6.7, I think, interest rate. It wasn't too bad. This is fixed rate 30 year for commercial loans, which was much better than what I could have got from commercial banks. But yeah, interest rates are higher, especially when compared to 2-3 years ago. The best deal today are structured with this in mind from day one. You factor in that your interest rates or your financing costs is going to be higher. Also, the source where you can get your money, where it be local banks, I just said portfolio lenders, private capital. I just did DSCR loans. I was really impressed with them, to tell you the truth. So maybe I'll do a session on DSCR loans, what they mean, what you can do, and how you can use DSCR loans, especially if you're doing BRRRR. But the idea is that we run what-if scenarios on each deal. What happens, quote unquote, if the appraisal comes in low, for example, or what if the interest rates rise before I refi, or what if I need to leave more cash in the deal? So these are what-if scenarios that you can run as part of the deal analysis process. And then that will help you decide whether to go ahead, and if so, how to position yourself. One overlooked tactic is maintaining relationships with multiple lenders and shopping aggressively when ready to refi. There are lots of financing options. I wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. Look around, check out what's available in your local area for the type of property you're working with, and and then make the most reasonable and the best choice. The spread between lenders is often significant, and so shopping around can help you, and you can save you some money. So what are some of the action items on this? Underwriters underwrite all deals assuming refi rates of 7% plus to remain conservative. Develop relationships with maybe 3 to 4 or 5 lenders who understand BRRRR, and stress test all deals assuming partial capital recovery, and verify that they cash flow with reserves in place. Okay, that's number 4. I'll get down to number 5, which is tenant selection, smarter tenant selection and lease up. I suppose the question is, how can you avoid vacancy, turnover, and tenant headaches post renovations? Okay, we're now in the rent phase. And so how do you reduce vacancies, turnovers, and headaches? Many BRRRR investors put 90% of their focus on the acquisition and the renovation phase. They put all their thoughts and efforts on the buying, renovating phase, and they often neglect the leasing phase, which is the rent phase. Yet today, tenant preferences are shifting, and expectations for rental quality have risen. The quality tenants, the desirable tenants, the tier one tenants, their expectations are higher than they used to be a few years ago. So if you got a product that's not that great, you may not be, and the competition is strong, you may have a hard time trying to appeal to them. So, a poor leasing strategy can lead to extended vacancies, poor tenant fits, or even high turnover, which all have the effect of killing your cash flow. So the top performing investors like you and I are pre-marketing properties before rehab completion. We're staging our units to stand out, to differentiate ourselves from our competition. And we're also taking tenant screening extremely seriously, verifying credit, income, rental history, fit for the property. I even do home visits, as you know, because tenant turnover is very, very expensive, and you just don't want to rent to problem tenants who are just going to just nonstop drama. It's just not worth it. So screening becomes very, very important so you can weed out the good, the bad from the ugly. Additionally, they design properties with tenant retention in mind, flexible lease options, pet-friendly options, responsive management, and just little touches that focus on tenant satisfaction. The result, faster lease ups and longer tenancy. So what are the action items here? Begin pre-leasing your property 2 to 3 weeks before renovation is complete to reduce vacancy gap. Implement rigorous screening processes. Check things like credit, income, background references, etc. I do home visits. And add retention-focused amenities, things like pet-friendly, in-unit laundry, secure access, small upgrades, and all these things that drive tenant satisfaction. And then finally, number 6 is building resilience for long-term portfolio success. The question is, how do smart investors position themselves to thrive long-term, not just on their next BRRRR deals? We're in the game for a long time. So how do you thrive and survive, for the long haul? Well, the market will continue to evolve, and the BRRRR investors who succeed long-term are building resilience into their portfolio. They operate from a place of margin and flexibility. We're not chasing the perfect refi outcomes, but building a sustainable cash flow first. Okay, what does this mean? We focus on de-risking the portfolio, things like maintaining healthy reserves, ensuring property maintenance is proactive, staying on top of tenant needs, and running regular portfolio reviews. Okay, so again, I think that's a good one to repeat. We're de-risking our portfolios. What does that mean? We're maintaining reserves, healthy reserves, maybe several months reserves, ensuring the property maintenance is proactive. Something goes wrong, we fix it straight away. You may do routine maintenance. Staying on top of tenant needs, making sure we understand what the tenants are looking for, and focus on tenant satisfaction. And also we do a regular review of our portfolio to make sure that, it's performing as we expect it to do. If the market shifts, we're able to pivot, and as conditions change. And finally, we invest heavily in community, participate in, we attend BRRRRs, get the pulse with other investors, and just kind of keep current with what's going on. Because success in today's BRRRR world is no longer about going solo. It's about learning from others and adapting quickly and safely. So in conclusion, the BRRRR strategy is still one of the most powerful tools in the residential real estate investor's toolbox, in my opinion, but only when applied with today's realities in mind. Investors who blindly follow old models risk getting caught up in poor deals, missed refinance outcomes, or extended vacancies. Okay, those who take really a smarter, more disciplined approach, as we talked about in this live stream, we're building portfolios that will stand the test of time. We're sourcing resilient deals, navigating renovations wisely, structuring flexible financing, and attracting great tenants. And we're thinking long-term as opposed to short-term. So if you want to build lasting wealth through BRRRR investing, really there's no substitute, in my opinion, for leaving or from learning from those who have gone before you and learning from their experiences, whether it be the good experiences, the bad experiences, or the ugly. Okay, so that pretty much sums up the 732. The education port here. Again, if you got some questions, please put them in the chat box and I'll get to them shortly. Anything to real estate, put them in there and I'll try my best to give you a good response. If you want to shoot me an email, you can shoot me an email. My email address is joe@joeasamoah.com, joe@joeasamoah.com. And if you want to book a one-on-one with me where we can do a deep dive into a subject of your choosing, any situations that you're facing that's kind of, giving you stress, frustrations, there's a pretty good chance that I've at some point experienced that, and therefore I can share my perspective with you. So if you want to do a one-on-one, go to my website, www.joeasamoah.com, and press the Ask Dr. Joe, and you can book a session. Okay, let's get down to some of the questions that we have today. Let's have a look. What you got? Guy, hey Dao2, hey in Phoenix. How you doing, sir? Hope you're doing well. In sunny Phoenix, I hear the weather is hot over there in the hundreds, I think. I went to schedule a deep dive with you. However, it only shows that you're available on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Yeah, I mean, I try to, limit. I mean, certain days I do. I work Mondays through Fridays, 8 a.m. p.m. I'm actually watching these live shows while I'm at work. The weekends are idle for me. Do you have availability on Saturday? I'm willing to pay double. Probably the best thing to do, Nestor, is to shoot me an email. That's my email is, let's put it on the screen. It's here, joe@joeasamoah.com, joe@joeasamoah.com. And, put some dates that you think you may be available, and I'll see if I can work it in. I try to block out certain windows where I do my one-on-ones, but I may be able to work something with you. So shoot me an email at joe@joeasamoah.com and put some about 3 or 4 or 5 alternate dates and times, and I'll see what I can do to help you out there. Okay, that was this one, wasn't it? Okay, that was Nestor. And we go to Dao2 again. Submitted my RFTA, that's the request for tenancy approval, which is part of the Section 8 progress for my second ever Housing Choice Voucher Program, Section 8 tenant on Tuesday, 6th of 10, 2025. Okay, that's yesterday. Congratulations, you submitted your RFTA packet. So essentially what Dao2 is saying is that he had a property and he put it up for rent, and he got an applicant who had a Section 8 voucher, and he selected that voucher holder. As part of the process, you got to fill some paperwork, and you got to submit that to the housing authority, and that paperwork is called RFTA, Request for Tenancy Approval. So he submitted the information to the housing authority yesterday. They acknowledged they received it today. Good. Just waiting to hear back from them. New tenant wants to move 7/1/2025, which is next month. Okay, let's have a look. I asked HCVP for the top amount they pay for this 3-bedroom. I don't cover utilities. Have you ever had a tenant have an issue paying their utilities? If so, how did the tenant overcome this? Okay, let's see if I can answer this question. So his first one was he submitted the paperwork on yesterday, which is the 10th of June, and the tenant wants to move in there July the 1st, which is about 20 days from now. I don't know about how it is in Phoenix, but I know in the DC area, DC, for example, the cutoff is the 5th of the month. So if you want the tenant, if the tenant wants to move in on July the 1st, you've had to submit the paperwork in by June the 5th. Okay, the 5th is the deadline here in DC. You're going to have to find out from the housing authority in Phoenix what is their deadline, you know, cutoff for a tenant to move in there the following month. So I know that if you were in DC, the tenant could not move in July the 1st because you submitted the paperwork on June the 10th. The paperwork would be, the tenant could move in there August the 1st, but not July the 1st. Now, there are some exceptions to that. If it's what they call an emergency move, where the tenant has to move because of some issues, it could be, you know, the house has failed, you know, inspection, or, you know, it's in abatement, or which means that you know, there's something wrong with the house and the tenant's been told to leave. There's maybe some health and safety issues, or it could be some violence issues, or, you know, that is causing the tenant to need to move immediately as an emergency. So in those cases, you know, they can move in there before the 1st, and they tend to put them on a fast track. So I don't know if your tenant meets that criteria. If they do, then you may be okay. It may be possible to do it June the 1st or July the 1st. But if it's not, if it's just a regular transfer, then you may not be able to hit the July the 1st. And so what that means is that they may have to stay where they are for an extra month, you know, before they move into yours. So I would suggest that you contact the housing authority and find out from them what's the quickest they can get this thing done, and when can your tenant move in there as soon as possible. Okay, the second part of the question was, I asked, hey, for the top amount they pay for the 3-bedroom, and you don't pay utilities, the tenant pays utilities. Have you ever had a tenant issue paying? I never pay utilities for my properties. All my properties are single families, whereby, you know, I don't control the thermostat. The tenant controls the thermostat. And because they control the thermostat, in my opinion, they should pay the bill. Otherwise, they'll run up the AC during the summertime and run up the heat during the wintertime, or even run a car wash business, all where you pay. And so there's really no incentive for them to conserve energy and keep the utilities low. So that's why I never pay it. In this area, which I think is probably the same everywhere, the electric and the gas bills tend to follow the tenant. The water bill follows the property, which means that if they don't pay their water bill, then it goes to the house. It could be a lien on the house placed by the water company. Whereas if they don't pay the electric and gas bill, that's not your concern. They'll just cut it off. And but it's not going to be attached to you or to the property. So yeah, so you have to, I'm very, very diligent on the water bills that my tenants pay. I requested what we call a duplicate water bill from the utility company. So I see, you know, if the tenants are paying their rent, paying their water bill. And if they're not, then I call them. Or I may find some programs out there that could assist them with utilities. So yeah, yeah. I mean, because a lot of these tenants, they just don't have a lot of money. It's a struggle financially just to stay afloat, and so you have to stay on top of them to make sure that at least the water bill is being paid, and you know, the electric and gas. If they don't pay that, they'll get cut off. But yeah, so sometimes some of my tenants, to answer your question, have had issues paying or challenges paying utility bills, but I stay on top of it and you know, try to send them reminders or arrange with the water company so that they're on a payment plan or things like that. So why, the next question is for Dow 2. Why did you refinance the DSCR loan? It seems any mortgage you have had prior to today should have been lower. Thanks. Yeah, what happened, Dow 2, was that these are commercial loan. Well, there were commercial loans, which means that you know, were from commercial banks. They were amortized for 25 years, but they had either 5-year or 7-year resets. So they come, every 5 to 7 years, you have to re-up, and you have to go back, and you'll get whatever the prevailing rate is at that time, as opposed to a lot of residential, which is 30-year fixed, and it stays that rate. So I had a commercial loan, and commercial loans typically are fixed for 5 to 7 years, amortized over 25 years. So we had reached that, I think 2 of the loans this week, in fact, I got them 7 years ago. So the 7-year anniversaries were approaching. And so the bank, said, hey, we have to, redo this loan. And so they asked me what I wanted to do. I contacted others and did some comparison shopping, and found this company who were doing these DSCR loans. And I was pleasantly surprised. The rates were even better than what the banks were offering. The paperwork was very straightforward. And, it's fixed, 30-year fixed. What else can I say? There is a prepayment penalty, so you have to keep it up for at least 5 years, which is okay with me because I'm looking to keep these properties for a long time. And I bought it in my entity, so they financed it in my entity. So they were just better, than what the commercial banks were offering. So I went that route, and very pleased with it. And so I did 2 this week, and I did another one about a month ago. And I think I'm going to do another one probably sometime later this month or next month. So I'm kind of leaning more towards the DSCR. I kind of like them. They're better than, in my opinion, better than what you can get from commercial banks anyway. But, if you feel you can get better odds, let me know. But that's why I did this, Dow 2, is because my loan was reset after 7 years. And I did some comparative shopping and went with a DSCR loan as opposed to refinancing with the local lender, which I had. Okay, are you staging by literally including furniture, or are you doing virtual stage? I stage. Well, yeah, my wife has a staging business, so we stage our homes literally with furniture, knickknacks. So that way, the thing about staging, I know most investors don't do it, especially landlords. They don't do it. It's because I know there's a cost to it, but in my opinion, there's a benefit. The benefit outweighs the cost. Because you clearly differentiate yourselves from your competition. That's number one. Number two, people can visualize how they could. The house turns from just a house into a home. There's emotions there. People can see themselves in this home, and as opposed to just an empty house with nothing there. So they have to imagine if their couch will fit in there, or where the TV will go, or all that kind of stuff. But once it's staged, they can see it for themselves. That's the reason why a lot of these builders, they create model homes. Why? Because model homes sell, and versus they're not going to show you a house that's just empty because there's no emotions there. So the model home, they create emotions, and people buy based on emotions. And for rentals, it differentiates you, in my opinion, from the competition because nobody else does that. So that's what we do, and I've been doing that for a number of years, and it works. It works because people, when they walk into the home, it's like, whoa, I can, it just looks different, and it feels different, and it tends to, allow you to get better quality tenants because they can see themselves living there. Okay. Aloha from Hawaii, financial firefighter. Hi, hope you're doing well. And greetings from Hawaii. Okay. Katie. Hey, Katie, how you doing? Hi, Dr. Joe. When purchasing, again, if you got some questions, put them in the chat box, and I'll try to get to them in a couple of minutes. Hi, Dr. Joe. When purchasing a property, do you typically include your renovation costs in the amount you finance with a loan, or do you cover those separately? Curious as to how you structure that. It depends. If you're going for a hard money lender, then typically, there's the acquisition cost and there's the renovation cost, and they will fund a certain percentage of both. Some may fund 80% of the acquisition, or 100% of the renovation, which means that you have to bring into the table 20% of the acquisition, because they're going to fund 100% of the renovations. Or some of them may do 90% of the acquisition, 90% of the renovations, or 80% of the acquisition, 80% of the renovation. So it just depends on the lender. And depending on your situation, you may want to shop around to see one that makes the most sense for you. So that's if you're using hard money lenders. When I've typically used a lot of commercial lenders where they'll fund, let's say, 75% or 80% of the acquisition, 75%, 80% of the renovations, which means that I'm now responsible for 25% of the acquisition and 25% of the renovation of the total cost. And typically the funds are released, especially on the renovation side, based on completion. They have what we call draws. So the draws are usually released, or the funds are released based on completion of certain milestones. So that's otherwise you can do I've done 3-part financing, whereby the bank will borrow me a certain percentage, or a lender will borrow me a certain thing. If I don't have or if I don't want to use my money for the rest, you can use private money. And there are people out there who have money, and they will be open to borrowing it to you or lending it to you. But obviously, they got to know, like, and trust you. And you have to be of good character, whereby you're going to pay them back. So it's really a matter of, can you allay their concerns about your ability to return the money, and whether you know what you're doing. You're not going to run off with their money and go off to Hawaii or wherever else, but you're going to be a good steward of their hard-earned money. But if you can do that, you may be able to tap into private money, which is what I've been doing for a while. So you can fund your renovation costs in different ways, either your personal funds, hard money. Some lenders will fund part of that, or all of the renovation costs, and otherwise you can use private money if you don't have it. Okay, so that's how I answer that question, Katie. I haven't spoken to you for a while, Katie. Again, if you got some questions, please put in the chat box. I'm going to wrap it up in a few minutes. So making last calls for questions before we wrap up for today. Ouch, new tenant has already given current landlord a move-out date for June the 30th. I don't think it can be extended. Hopefully HCBV can get everything approved. I will check into it. Yes, you're going to have to do that. And you probably should have found out how long it takes, and that way you could have educated the tenant. The worst case scenario, they're going to be, if they have a voucher, then the voucher is not, they're not going to pay two landlords, i.e. they're not going to pay their current landlord if she is moved into your property, and likewise they're not going to pay you if the paperwork is not done. So I think what's going to play out, Dautu, I could be wrong, is that she's going to have to stay there another month, or until the paperwork is done. Because otherwise she's going to have to leave where she's currently living. And if she leaves, then the current landlord is not going to get payments because she's not there, but she's got nowhere to go, until your property has been approved and gone through the entire process. So it's easier for them to stay in their existing home until all the paperwork is completed for you, and then they transition from their current home to your home once everything is done. That's normally how it does. I mean, there are some times where I've thought the tenant would move in on, let's say, July the 1st, but for whatever reason, the property may have failed inspections, and the landlord can't complete everything before the first, and the housing authority is not going to allow the tenant to move into the property if it hasn't passed the inspection. So in that case, they can't move into your property, which means that they have to stay where they are until your property passes and everything is done. So I don't think, again, I could be wrong. I'm not too familiar with what goes on in Phoenix, but my experience is that I doubt you're going to be able to, unless Phoenix is real efficient, the housing authority, they may be able to get it all done before the 1st of July. But I would call the housing authority and find out, what their policy is and what's, based on their experience, the likelihood of that happening. Okay, it is now 7:52. I'm going to wrap it up for the day. I hope this was a helpful session. And so we're going to be back next Wednesday, another Wealth Wednesday, different topic. Probably touch on something to do with Section 8 next week. I'm not too sure what the topic's going to be, but I'll figure something out. And hopefully this is helpful today. And I will see you next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So have yourself a wonderful week. Take care. Bye.